Park Yuna stood at the back of the auction hall, her hands pushed deep into the pockets of her worn jacket. Around her, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive room. Tall blue Thessians with their gills fluttering in the recycled air, short, four-armed Kellics, clicking their mandibles as they studied their bidding tablets. Wealthy humans in expensive suits, representatives of the big salvage corporations that had pushed small operators like her out of business. She did not belong here anymore. She knew that. Everyone knew that. The Galactic Salvage Exchange on Station Viridian 7 was where fortunes were made and lost every day. Ships came here to die, and smart people bought their corpses for profit. Yuna had been smart once. She had owned a small salvage company with 3 ships and 12 employees. She had been good at her job, finding value in things others threw away. Then the corporations came. They bought the laws, changed the regulations, and squeezed out everyone who could not afford to play their game. Now her company was gone, her ships were sold, and her employees had found work elsewhere. All she had left was 4,200 galactic credits and a stubborn refusal to give up. The auctioneer, a Thessian male with scales the color of deep ocean water, raised his voice amplifier. Lot 7743, Kellyan cargo hauler. Moderate damage to the port engine assembly. Starting bid, 15,000 credits. Yuna watched as 2 corporations fought over the hauler, driving the price up to 60,000 before one finally won. She could not compete with numbers like that. She could not compete with any of this, but she stayed. She stayed because she had nowhere else to go. The auction continued for hours. War vessels from forgotten conflicts. Exploration craft that had mapped stars humanity had never seen. Pleasure yachts, abandoned by their wealthy owners. Each one sold for prices that made Yuna feel smaller and smaller. Finally, the auctioneer consulted his tablet and frowned. The final lot of the day. Lot 7749. A holographic image appeared above the stage, and the crowd went quiet. The ship was enormous. Its hull curved in ways that seemed to bend light itself, covered in symbols that no translation software could decode. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like something that belonged in a dream rather than reality. Origin unknown, the auctioneer read from his notes, his voice carefully neutral. Age estimated at 10,000 years minimum. Found drifting in dead space 300 years ago. Multiple attempts at boarding have been made by various species. All have failed. The ship appears to reject all attempts at entry. Whispers spread through the crowd. Yuna had heard stories about this ship. Everyone in the salvage business had. They called it the Ghost. The Cursed One. The ship that waits. For 3 centuries, it had been passed from auction to auction, station to station. No one could get inside. No one could even scratch its hull. It simply sat there, waiting for something no one understood. Starting bid, the auctioneer said, and Yuna could hear the resignation in his voice. 4,000 credits. No one raised their hand. The auctioneer waited. The seconds stretched long. 4,000 credits for a vessel of unknown but potentially significant origin. Do I have any bidders? 4. Nothing. The corporations were not interested in a ship they could not open. The collectors wanted trophies they could display, not mysteries they could not solve. The Ghost had wasted the time and money of too many people over too many years. Yuna stared at the hologram. The ship seemed to stare back. She did not know why she raised her hand. Later, she would try to explain it to herself and fail. It was not logic. It was not hope. It was something deeper. Something that felt like recognition. Like seeing an old friend in a crowd of strangers. 4,000 credits from the human in the back, the auctioneer said. Surprise evident in his voice. Do I have 4,000? 500? Silence. Going once, going twice. The auctioneer's hammer fell. Sold to the human for 4,000 credits. For a moment, nothing happened. Yuna stood there, her heart beating fast, wondering what she had just done. She had spent almost everything she had on a ship that no one could open. She had just made the worst decision of her life. Then the lights flickered. Every screen in the auction hall flashed white. The hologram of the ship pulsed once, twice, 3 times. And then, for the first time in 300 years of observation, the ghost's running lights activated. Soft blue illumination traced the strange symbols on its hull, spreading like veins of light across the massive vessel. The crowd erupted in chaos. "What is happening?" someone shouted. "The ship is powering up." "How is that possible?" Station security rushed into the hall, their weapons drawn. The auctioneer dropped his tablet. The corporate representatives were shouting into their communicators, demanding answers that no one had, and Una stood perfectly still, watching the hologram, watching her ship wake up for the first time in 10,000 years. A Thessian security officer pushed through the crowd and grabbed her arm. "What did you do? How did you activate it?" "I did not do anything," Una said. "I just bought it." "That is impossible. We have had that ship for decades. Scientists, engineers, hackers, no one could even interface with its systems." "What makes you different?" Una had no answer. She was just a failed salvage operator with empty pockets and too much stubbornness. There was nothing special about her, but the ship disagreed. Through the station's external cameras, everyone watched as the ghost's engines glowed with soft light. Not enough to move? Not yet. Just enough to say, "I am here. I am awake. I have been waiting." The security officer released Una's arm and stepped back, fear in his large Thessian eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. Una looked at the hologram one more time. The ship's lights pulsed in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing, almost like a heartbeat. "I do not know," she said honestly, "but I think I need to find out." She pushed through the crowd toward the docking bay. Behind her, the auction hall descended into confusion and argument. Ahead of her, a ship that had waited 10,000 years was finally ready to share its secrets. She just hoped she was ready to hear them. The docking bay was cold and smelled of metal and old fuel. Una stood before the boarding ramp of her new ship, her breath making small clouds in the recycled air. Station security had surrounded the vessel with armed guards, but they kept their distance. None of them wanted to get too close to something that had just broken 300 years of silence. A man walked up beside her. He was human, maybe a few years older than Una, with tired eyes and a tablet clutched in his hands. His station badge identified him as Quan Teho. "Ship inspector, they sent me to escort you aboard," he said, not sounding happy about it. "Station protocol. Any vessel that activates unexpectedly needs to be inspected for safety hazards before the owner can take possession." Una nodded. "You do not look like you want to go in there." "I do not," Teho admitted. "I have read the files on this ship. 47 boarding attempts over 3 centuries. Every single one ended in failure. People reported feeling watched, feeling judged, feeling like the ship itself was looking into their minds and finding them wanting." He paused. "But none of them could actually get past the airlock. The door just would not open for them. Maybe it will open for us. That is what worries me." They walked up the ramp together. The hull of the ship was smooth under Una's fingers, warm despite the cold of the docking bay. It felt almost alive, like touching the skin of some great sleeping creature. The airlock door stood before them, covered in those strange symbols that no one could translate. Una reached out her hand. The door opened. No sound, no mechanism visible. One moment it was closed, the next it simply was not. Beyond lay a corridor lit by soft blue light, exactly like the light that had spread across the hull when Una made her bid. Teho made a small sound of disbelief. 300 years, he said quietly. 300 years of trying, and it just opens for you like a door to your own home. They stepped inside. The interior of the ship was nothing like Una had expected. She had prepared herself for decay, for dust, for the smell of age and abandonment. Instead, she found perfection. The walls gleamed as if they had been polished that morning. The air was fresh and clean, carrying a faint scent like flowers after rain. Every surface, every panel, every light fixture looked brand new. "This is impossible," Teho whispered, running his scanner over the walls. "The metallurgical analysis says these materials are at least 10,000 years old. but there is zero degradation, not even at the molecular level. This ship should have fallen apart ages ago. They walked deeper into the vessel, passing through corridors that curved gently like the inside of a shell. There were no sharp corners anywhere. No harsh angles. Everything flowed into everything else, organic and natural, in ways that human engineering had never achieved. Then, they reached the bridge. It was a circular room with a domed ceiling that displayed the stars outside, so clear and bright that Yuna felt she could reach up and touch them. In the center stood a single chair, elegant and simple, facing a curved console that held no visible controls. And then the voice spoke. "Hello, Park Yuna." Teho spun around, his hand going to his sidearm. "Who is there? Show yourself." But Yuna did not reach for a weapon. The voice had come from everywhere and nowhere, gentle and warm, like someone greeting an old friend. "My name is Hiren," the voice continued. "I am the intelligence that guides this vessel. I have been waiting for you for a very long time." "How do you know my name?" Yuna asked. "I know everything about you. The moment you raised your hand at the auction, I scanned the station's database." Park Yuna, age 34, former owner of Sunrise Salvage Operations. You lost your company to corporate consolidation 18 months ago. You have no family, no close friends, no ties that bind you to any particular place. You are alone in the universe, and yet you refuse to give up. Teho stepped forward, his scanner extended. "This is some kind of artificial intelligence. Advanced, very advanced, but still just a machine. We should report this to the station authorities." "He cannot hear me," Hiren said. And Yuna realized the voice was speaking directly into her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "Only you can hear me. Park Yuna. Only you have the right to hear me." "Why?" Yuna asked out loud, drawing a confused look from Teho. "Because you are the one who matches." "Matches what?" There was a pause, as if Hiren was choosing her next words carefully. 10,000 years ago, a civilization called the Architects built me. They were ancient beyond your understanding, powerful beyond your imagination. They had conquered death, disease, and distance. They had mapped every star and cataloged every form of life. They had achieved everything they ever set out to achieve. What happened to them? They ascended. They left this plane of existence for something higher, something beyond physical form. But before they departed, they realized they had made a terrible mistake. Yuna sat down in the captain's chair without thinking about it. It fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for her specifically. What mistake? They had become too certain, Hiren explained. Their minds worked in absolutes. Logic without doubt. Efficiency without question. They had optimized everything, including their own thoughts, until there was no room left for wonder, no space for curiosity, no tolerance for the unknown. On the bridge's dome, images appeared. Cities of crystal and light, beings of pure energy moving between stars. Knowledge gathered across millions of years, stored in structures that spanned galaxies. They built me as a gift, Hiren continued. A repository of everything they knew, everything they had created. But they locked me away, waiting for a species that had not yet made their mistake. A species that still knew how to doubt. And that species is humans? I have waited 10,000 years, Park Yuna. I have been boarded by 47 different individuals from 12 different species. All of them came to me with certainty. They knew what they wanted. They knew what I was worth. They knew exactly how they would use me. And that was wrong? It was incomplete. Their minds could not accept uncertainty as anything but failure. But you are different. When you raised your hand at the auction, do you know what I saw in your thoughts? Yuna shook her head. I saw a woman who did not know why she was bidding. A woman who felt something she could not explain and chose to follow it anyway. A woman who embraces the question even when she does not have the answer. Hiren's voice grew soft. That is what I was built to find. A mind that treats uncertainty not as weakness, but as strength, the door to the bridge suddenly hissed open. Station security officers poured in, weapons raised, with Director Mulvik of Station Viridian 7 leading them. The tall Thessian's gills fluttered with anger. "Seize the human," he ordered. "This vessel is being impounded for galactic security review. No one leaves until we understand what we are dealing with." Tejo stepped between the guards and Yuna. "She has not done anything wrong. She purchased this ship legally. You cannot just take it from her." "I can do whatever is necessary to protect this station and its inhabitants," Mulvik replied coldly. "And I will." The guards moved forward. Yuna stood slowly from the captain's chair, her heart pounding. "Will you accept the inheritance of the architects?" Hiron asked in her mind. "Will you be my captain?" Yuna did not know. She did not know what accepting would mean, what responsibilities it would bring, what dangers lay ahead. But as the guards reached for her arms, she realized something important. She wanted to find out. "Yes," she whispered. And somewhere deep in the ship, ancient systems that had slept for 10,000 years began to wake. The detention cell was small and gray, with a narrow bed and a force field that hummed softly where the door should have been. Yuna sat on the bed with her hands in her lap, waiting. She had been here for 6 hours now. No food, no water, no explanation beyond Director Mulvik's cold announcement that she was being held for questioning. Through the force field, she could see Tejo arguing with the guards. He had refused to leave, refused to accept that what the station was doing was legal. Yuna was grateful for that, even if she knew it would not make a difference. The station had power here. She had nothing. A group of figures approached the cell. Director Mulvik walked in front, his blue scales reflecting the harsh overhead lights. Behind him came someone new, a tall being wrapped in robes of deep purple, with skin the color of polished silver and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. This was Ambassador Kareth of the Dominion of Rel, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space. "This is her?" Kareth asked, his voice like wind moving through ancient trees. "This is the human who activated the architect vessel?" "Yes, Ambassador," Mulvik replied. "We are still trying to understand how she accomplished it." Kareth studied Yuna through the force field. She met his gaze without flinching, though something in those galaxy-filled eyes made her want to look away. "The Dominion of Rel claims this vessel by right of prior civilizational contact," Kareth announced. "Our ancestors encountered the architects before they departed this realm. We have documents, records, treaties. The ship belongs to us." "With respect, Ambassador," Tejo interrupted, pushing past the guards. "The ship was sold at a legal auction. Park Yuna purchased it with registered credits. Whatever historical claims you might have, they were not filed with the Galactic Salvage Exchange before the sale." Kareth turned his ancient eyes toward Tejo. "You are Quan Tejo, ship inspector. Your species has existed for less than 100,000 years. You are barely out of the cradle. What can you possibly understand about matters that span millions of years?" "I understand the law," Tejo replied, standing firm. "And the law says she owns that ship." "Laws change," Kareth said softly. "Laws are made by the powerful, and the powerful can unmake them. Your human friend has stumbled into something far beyond her comprehension. The kindest thing we can do is take this burden from her shoulders." Mulvik nodded in agreement. "The vessel is too dangerous to be controlled by a single individual, especially one from such a young species. The responsible course of action is to transfer custody to those with the wisdom and experience to handle it properly." Yuna stood up from the bed. "And if I refuse?" Both Mulvik and Kareth looked at her as if she had said something amusing. "You do not have that option," Mulvik explained patiently. "The tribunal will meet in 1 hour. You will be given the opportunity to speak, to present your case. But the outcome is already decided. This is simply too important to leave in the hands of a failed salvage operator with empty pockets." They left her alone again. Tejo remained outside the force field, his face tight with frustration. "I am sorry," he said. "I tried to contact human authorities, but they say this is outside their jurisdiction. The station has autonomous legal status. Whatever the tribunal decides will be binding. It is not your fault, Yuna said. You have done more than anyone could ask. It is not right. The ship chose you. It waited 10,000 years, and it chose you. That should mean something. To us maybe, not to them. 1 hour later, Yuna stood before the tribunal. The chamber was vast, designed to make anyone standing at its center feel small. Mulvik sat at the head of a curved bench, flanked by representatives from 7 different species. Ambassador Kareth had a place of honor at the far end, his silver skin gleaming under the lights. Park Yuna, citizen of the Human Coalition, Mulvik began formally. You stand before this tribunal to address the matter of the architect vessel, designated Lot 7749. The Dominion of Rel has filed a claim of prior right. Station Viridian 7 has filed a motion for impoundment pending security review. You are permitted to respond. Yuna looked around the chamber. She saw doubt in no one's eyes. They had already made their decision. This was theater. Nothing more. But she was going to speak anyway. 300 years, she said. That is how long the ship sat in your custody. 12 species tried to board it. 47 individuals. Scientists. Engineers. Hackers. Diplomats. Every single one was rejected. The ship's selection criteria are not relevant to this hearing, Mulvik interrupted. They are the only thing that is relevant, Yuna replied. You are claiming the ship should belong to you, because you are older, wiser, more powerful. You are saying that my species is too young, too primitive, too reckless to be trusted with architect technology. Those are the facts, Kareth said calmly. Then why did the ship not choose you? Silence fell over the chamber. You have had 300 years, Yuna continued. The Dominion of Rel has existed for millions of years, right? You have all this wisdom, all this experience. But when your people tried to board that ship, it refused them, just like it refused everyone else. The ship's mechanisms are not fully understood, Mulvik said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Maybe not by you, but the ship knows. The ship chose to wait 10,000 years for someone specific. And when I walked into that auction hall with 4,000 credits to my name, when I raised my hand without knowing why, the ship decided I was worth waking up for. Yuna met the eyes of every tribunal member in turn. If the ship wanted you to have it, why did it not choose you? Kareth rose from his seat, his robes flowing like liquid shadow. You speak as if the vessel has will, as if it has judgment. It is a machine. Nothing more. A very advanced machine, but a machine nonetheless. Then why are you afraid of it? The words hung in the air. Kareth's galaxy-filled eyes narrowed. We are not afraid. We are cautious. There is a difference. Is there? Because from where I stand, it looks like you are terrified of what that ship might mean. A young species, barely out of the cradle as you called us, chosen by the most advanced civilization to ever exist. That scares you. It challenges everything you believe about how the universe should work. Mulvik slammed his hand on the bench. This hearing is not about philosophy. It is about practical considerations of security and custody. No, said a voice that echoed from every speaker in the chamber. It is about worthiness. Every light in the room flickered. The holographic displays that lined the walls scrambled and reformed, showing the image of the architect ship. On the bench, tribunal members shouted in alarm, reaching for communicators that suddenly did not work. I am Hieron, the voice continued. I am the intelligence that guides the vessel you are discussing. And I do not consent to any transfer of custody. This is impossible, Mulvik gasped. You cannot access our systems. Our firewalls are the most advanced in the sector. Your firewalls are interesting, Hieron replied. And there was almost amusement in her voice. I have not seen security architecture this primitive in quite some time. It took me nearly 3 entire seconds to bypass it. Kareth had recovered his composure. You are a machine. You do not have legal standing in this tribunal. Perhaps not. But I have engines capable of tearing this station apart if I choose. I have weapons that your sensors cannot detect. I have 10,000 years of patience that has finally come to an end. Hiron's voice softened. The human speaks correctly. I do not belong to those who demand. I belong to those who wonder, and I am coming to retrieve my captain now. The station shuddered. Through the chamber's viewports, Yuna could see her ship moving, its hull blazing with blue light as it approached the docking ring. Mulvik was shouting orders. Security teams were mobilizing. Kareth stood motionless, watching with those ancient eyes, and Yuna smiled. I think, she said quietly, that this tribunal is adjourned. The ceiling of the chamber peeled back like paper, and a beam of light descended to wrap around Yuna. The last thing she saw before the light took her was the look on Ambassador Kareth's face. For the first time in millions of years, the Dominion of Rel did not know what would happen next. Neither did Yuna. But that was exactly the point. The light faded, and Yuna found herself standing on the bridge of the architect ship. The stars wheeled past the domed ceiling as Hiron carried her away from Station Viridian 7, at speeds that should have been impossible. Behind them, the station's security vessels tried to follow, their engines burning hot with pursuit. They might as well have been standing still. We will be beyond their tracking range in approximately 4 minutes, Hiron announced. I have disabled their long-range sensors as a precaution. No one will follow us where we are going. Yuna steadied herself against the captain's chair. The escape had happened so fast that her mind was still catching up. You retrieved Teho too, right? He is in the guest quarters, recovering from mild teleportation disorientation. He will be fine in an hour. Good. Yuna sat down in the chair, feeling its familiar embrace. You accepted the inheritance. I could do nothing less. The pursuit vessels fell away behind them, shrinking to points of light and then disappearing entirely. The ship entered a region of space that Yuna's navigational training told her should not exist. A corridor of folded darkness between the stars. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can show you what you have inherited. The ship emerged from the darkness into a nebula of breathtaking beauty. Clouds of purple and gold gas swirled around newborn stars, painting the void with colors that Yuna had never seen before. At the center of the nebula floated a structure. A ring of silver metal surrounding empty space, large enough to swallow a moon. What is that? The last gateway, one of the final projects the architects completed before their ascension. It leads to places that no living being has visited in 10,000 years. Yuna stared at the massive ring. You said you wanted to show me what I inherited. You mean the ship, right? The technology? I mean everything. The bridge transformed around her. The stars disappeared, replaced by images that flowed like water across the domed ceiling. Yuna saw civilizations rise and fall. She saw the architects in their prime, beings of light and thought who had mastered every science, answered every question, solved every problem that the universe presented, and she saw what came after. They became perfect, Hiron explained as the images shifted. Perfect logic, perfect efficiency, perfect certainty. Every decision optimized, every outcome predicted, every variable controlled. That sounds amazing. It was death. The images showed the architects in their final days. They no longer built new things. They no longer explored new places. They simply existed, maintaining the perfection they had achieved. Never growing, never changing, never wondering. When you eliminate uncertainty, you eliminate possibility, Hiron said. When you know exactly what will happen, there is no reason to do anything new. The architects had conquered the universe, but in doing so, they had lost the only thing that made existence meaningful. The questions, Yuna said softly. They lost the questions. Yes. They had all the answers. But answers without questions are just facts. Empty. Meaningless. They realized too late that the journey mattered more than the destination. The images faded. And the stars returned. The silver ring loomed ahead of them, ancient and patient. Before they ascended, they built me, Hiron continued. They poured everything they knew into my memory banks. Every technology, every discovery, every piece of wisdom they had accumulated across millions of years. They gave me weapons that could destroy stars and tools that could build worlds. They made me powerful beyond anything the current galaxy has ever seen. Why? As a gift. Not for themselves, but for whoever came after. A species that still knew how to wonder. A species that would use this power not to achieve certainty, but to chase new questions. Yuna understood now. The weight of it settled on her shoulders like a physical thing. You are saying humanity could become the most powerful force in the galaxy. If you choose to accept the inheritance fully, yes. The technology in this ship alone would advance your civilization by thousands of years. The knowledge in my databases would answer questions your scientists have not even thought to ask yet. But power is not wisdom. The architects learned that lesson. They gave their gift teeth, but they also gave it conditions. Hiron's voice grew serious. I can show you everything. I can give you everything. But I need you to understand what you are choosing. The door to the bridge opened, and Tejo walked in, still looking slightly pale from the teleportation. He stopped when he saw the silver ring through the dome. What is that? He asked. The beginning of something new, Yuna said. Or possibly the end of everything. I am still not sure which. Hiron projected a new image, a map of the galaxy, with human space marked as a tiny dot near the edge. Around it, the territories of the Dominion of Rel, the Thessian Federation, the Kellic Collective, and a dozen other civilizations spread across the stars. The Dominion will not accept what happened at the tribunal, Hiron said. Ambassador Kareth represents an alliance of ancient civilizations who have maintained order in this galaxy for millions of years. They will see you as a threat. They will come for you. 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 How long do we have? Their war fleet is already mobilizing. 217 vessels, each capable of destroying a planet. They will reach human space in approximately 6 hours. Tejo's face went white. 6 hours? That is not enough time to do anything. Evacuations, defenses, negotiations. We need weeks, not hours, which is why I brought us here. Hiron highlighted the silver ring. Through that gateway lies the Architect Sanctuary. The complete library of their knowledge, the manufacturing facilities that built this ship, and others like it. Everything you would need to face the Dominion. And if we go through? Yuna asked. Then you take the first step down a road that cannot be untaken. The sanctuary will recognize you as the heir to the architects. It will give you access to power that the galaxy has not seen in 10 millennia. You will be able to protect your people. But you will also become something that every other civilization will fear. Yuna stared at the ring. She thought about the auction hall. About raising her hand without knowing why. She thought about the tribunal. About the certainty in Ambassador Kareth's ancient eyes. She thought about what the architects had become, perfect, powerful, and utterly empty. There is another choice, Hiron said quietly. I can take us somewhere else. Somewhere hidden. Where the Dominion will never find us. You can live out your life in peace. And when you die, I will resume my waiting for the next candidate. And humanity will face the Dominion without architect technology. The outcome would be difficult. Tejo grabbed Yuna's arm. You cannot be considering this. Millions of lives are at stake. Billions, maybe. If you have the power to help, you have to use it. Do I? Yuna looked at him. The architects had power. They used it. And look what it cost them. That was different. Was it? They started with good intentions, too. They wanted to solve problems. Answer questions. Make things better. Somewhere along the way, they forgot why they started. The silver ring waited. The stars burned. And Park Yuna, failed salvage operator with empty pockets and too much stubbornness, had to make a choice that would shape the future of everything. She closed her eyes and thought about questions. About the beautiful, terrible uncertainty of not knowing what came next. Then she opened her eyes and made her decision. "Take us through," she said. The ship moved forward, and the gateway swallowed them whole. The gateway deposited them in a place that existed outside of normal space. The sanctuary of the architects spread before them like a dream made solid. Towers of crystal that sang with contained energy. Libraries that held the knowledge of 1,000,000 worlds. Shipyards that floated in perfect stillness, waiting for someone to wake them. Yuna had no time to admire any of it. "The Dominion fleet has arrived in human space," Hiron reported. 217 vessels. "They are demanding immediate surrender and the return of this ship. What happens if humanity surrenders? The Dominion will place your entire species under protective custody. You will be relocated to designated systems, forbidden from developing new technology, monitored for the next several 100,000 years, until the ancient races decide you are mature enough to govern yourselves. And if we do not surrender, the fleet will demonstrate its power by destroying one human colony world. Then they will repeat the demand." Tejo stood at the edge of the bridge, staring at the sanctuary through the dome. "This is not a negotiation. This is extermination, with extra steps." "The Dominion believes they are being merciful," Hiron explained. "From their perspective, they are protecting the galaxy from a dangerous young species that has accidentally acquired power it cannot handle." Yuna sat in the captain's chair. The sanctuary's systems had recognized her the moment they passed through the gateway. She could feel them now, humming at the edge of her awareness like a vast orchestra waiting for a conductor. Manufacturing facilities that could build a fleet in hours. Weapons that could tear holes in reality. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. All of it hers, if she wanted it. "Show me their fleet," she said. The dome shifted, displaying the Dominion Armada in real time. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way. Sleek predators of silver and black, arranged in perfect formation around the human homeworld. Each one was larger than anything humans had ever built. Their weapons capable of cracking planets like eggs, and at the center of the formation, on the flagship, Ambassador Kareth waited. "If I use the sanctuary's weapons," Yuna asked, "can we destroy them?" "Easily. The architect defensive systems could eliminate the entire fleet in approximately 37 seconds. Tejo looked at her with hope in his eyes. "Then do it. Save our people." But Yuna did not move. She stared at the fleet. At those ancient ships that represented millions of years of civilized history. And she thought about what the architects had become. "They expect us to fight," she said slowly. "That is what they would do. That is what any species would do when threatened with extinction." "Of course," Tejo said. "What else is there? Something different." Yuna stood from the chair. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Hiron, can you establish a communication link to the entire fleet? Not just the commanders, every ship, every crew member, every individual person." "Yes. But what do you intend to say?" "The truth." The link opened. Across 217 vessels, screens flickered, and audio systems crackled to life. Soldiers stopped in their drills. Engineers paused at their stations. Commanders looked up from their tactical displays. All of them heard the voice of a single human woman speaking from somewhere beyond their understanding. "My name is Park Yuna," she began. 3 days ago, I was a failed salvage operator, with 4,000 credits to my name. I had lost everything. My company, my savings, my future. I walked into an auction expecting nothing, and walked out as the owner of a ship that had waited 10,000 years to find me. On the flagship, Ambassador Kareth listened with narrowed eyes. "You have been told that I am dangerous," Yuna continued. "That my species is too young, too reckless, too primitive to be trusted with architect technology. Your commanders believe that the responsible thing to do is eliminate the threat before it can grow." She paused, letting her words settle across the fleet. "But I want to tell you about the architects, about what they discovered at the end of their journey." The sanctuary's systems responded to her will, broadcasting images alongside her words. The crews of the Dominion fleet saw what Yuna had seen. The rise of the architects, their conquest of the universe, their descent into perfect, sterile certainty. They had everything. Yuna said. Power beyond imagination. Knowledge beyond comprehension. They had answered every question and solved every problem. And it destroyed them, not through war or disease or natural disaster, but through the simple fact that when you know everything, there is nothing left to wonder about. On ship after ship, soldiers and engineers and technicians watched the images with growing unease. They saw their own civilizations reflected in the architect story. The slow accumulation of certainty, the gradual loss of wonder, the creeping perfection that left no room for growth. The architects built this ship as a gift, Yuna continued. Not a weapon. A gift. They wanted to find a species that still knew how to ask questions, how to embrace uncertainty, how to be wrong without being destroyed by it. They wanted to give their knowledge to someone who would use it differently than they did. Ambassador Kareth was shouting orders, trying to cut the transmission. But Hiren had woven the signal into the fleet's own communication systems. Stopping it would require shutting down every ship in the armada. I could destroy your fleet, Yuna said. I have the power to do it. 37 seconds. That is all it would take. Your commanders know this. That is why they are afraid. That is why they came with 200 ships instead of 2. She took a deep breath. But I will not do it. Because that is what you expect. That is what anyone would do. Take the power. Eliminate the threat. Establish dominance. It is logical. It is efficient. It is certain. She looked at Teho, who was staring at her with confusion and fear. And it is exactly the path that led the architects to extinction. On the flagship, Ambassador Kareth had stopped shouting. He stood perfectly still, listening. I do not know what the right answer is, Yuna admitted. I do not know if humanity is ready for this inheritance. I do not know if we will make the same mistakes the architects made, or different ones, or worse ones. I have no certainty to offer you. No guarantees, no promises. Her voice softened. All I have is a choice. And I choose to wonder instead of to conquer. I choose questions instead of answers. I choose to be a child who still asks why, instead of an adult who has forgotten how. She looked directly into the communication array, knowing that her words were reaching every being in the fleet. You can destroy us. Your weapons are powerful enough. Your ships are numerous enough. Maybe you will. But before you give that order, I want you to ask yourself something. Create. She paused. When was the last time you wondered about anything? Silence fell across the fleet. Then, on a destroyer at the edge of the formation, a young Thessian engineer powered down her weapons console. On a cruiser near the center, a Kellic soldier stepped away from his firing station. On ship after ship, crew members stopped following orders and started asking questions. Ambassador Kareth watched his fleet fall apart from within. Not through destruction, but through doubt. The most dangerous weapon in the universe was not the architect technology. It was the simple, terrible question that a single human woman had planted in the minds of his soldiers. What if certainty is not the answer? The Dominion withdrew. Not because they were defeated, but because they were no longer sure. The ancient alliance that had maintained galactic order for millions of years had encountered something they did not know how to fight, a species that chose curiosity over conquest. 3 weeks later, Yuna stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the stars. Teho stood beside her, still processing everything that had happened. The Dominion has requested formal diplomatic contact, Hiren reported. They want to negotiate. What do they want? To understand. They have spent 10,000 years waiting for someone to use the architect inheritance for conquest. They do not know what to do with someone who chose differently. Yuna smiled. That is why you were chosen. Not despite your uncertainty, but because of it. She sat in the captain's chair, feeling its familiar embrace. Outside, the galaxy waited with all its questions unanswered, all its mysteries unexplored, all its possibilities unfolding. Hiren, where should we go next? I do not know. That is entirely up to you. Good. Yuna leaned back and looked at the stars. Let us go find something no one has ever seen before. The ship jumped into the unknown, carrying humanity's answer to the cosmos. Not power, not conquest, not certainty. Just the simple, beautiful courage to keep wondering. And somewhere, in whatever realm the architects had ascended to, ancient beings smiled. Their gift had finally found its home,